Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to talk about the top 5 life lessons that I learned from studying at Cambridge University. I spent 6 years of my life studying medicine in Cambridge, and I know it's quite a clickbaity title, but I just wanted to share some honest reflections on the 6 years that I spent in Cambridge and extract some life lessons that you might find interesting. The first thing is the benefits of learning how to learn, how to study efficiently. From my experiences, there's a lot of people in Cambridge who study very, very hard, but don't necessarily study in the most efficient ways. And they do pretty reasonably in the exams, but I don't think that the amount of reward that they get compared to the amount of effort they put in has a particularly favorable ratio. Whereas I had a number of friends who worked hard, particularly in the early years, to improve their study technique. And for them, often they would achieve fairly similar results, but they just wouldn't have to work as hard for it. And I think it's a shame if you're putting in the effort to not get a reward that's in proportion with the amount of effort that you're putting in. And I think before you go to university, you can get away with actually studying pretty inefficiently, and you can still get good grades by working hard. When it comes to university, working hard but not working smart actually makes it pretty difficult for you to keep up with the work and to do well in your exams. And of course, this is not something specific to Cambridge. I think getting a great study technique is useful no matter what you do, and really it should be considered a fundamental life skill. And if you're interested in hearing the techniques and approaches that I used and found particularly helpful and productive when I was studying, I've made a video series about that on this channel, so I'll link that in the description below. And the second thing is the extent to which a brand really opens doors for you. So I found when I was studying in Cambridge, there were a lot of opportunities that just opened up to me, a lot of doors that were opened to go and do things that were pretty cool. So for example, I spent several summers teaching English abroad. I went to South Korea for a couple of months, and I went to Japan for a couple of months. And I think the main reason that I was able to go to those countries was because of that Oxford and Cambridge brand, meaning that they were willing to pay for you to fly over there and give you accommodation because they expected, if you're studying at Oxford and Cambridge, you're going to be a good English teacher, which I think is not necessarily the case. But those were some of the highlights of my university experience. And you can make an argument both ways about whether or not this is fair and whether this should be the case. But in my opinion, it's not really going to be changing anytime soon. But Cambridge and Oxford are just one way to gain a certain type of stamp of approval. But there's lots of alternative ways to gain a stamp of approval. And that might be working at a particular company, it might be having a particular type of experience. So I don't think that not studying at Oxford or Cambridge necessarily needs to hold you back too much. So the third thing I found was that I learned a lot more from my peers and the other people on the course than I did from the course itself and from the curriculum that was designed for us. One of the coolest things I found about being in Cambridge, which I imagine to some extent is also the case in other universities, is that there's a lot of very impressive and inspirational people around you that you can learn so much from. When I look back at Cambridge and think about what sort of things did I learn that will help set me up for my future career and for my life generally, almost all of the things that I can talk about and think about are actually things that I learned from other people in my year group and friends that I had and experiences that I shared with them. And I think often when we look at a university that we want to study at, or perhaps a place that we want to work, we do focus a lot on what we're going to be learning, the sort of content that we'll cover, or the type of nature of the work, but actually a key consideration is who are the other people that you're going to be working with, and are they the kinds of people that you learn a lot from. You may have heard of the saying that you are the aggregate of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I don't know who it was who initially said that, but I think there's definitely some truth in that, because anybody that you spend a lot of time with influences you a lot. That can be positive influence, it can be a negative influence, sometimes it's not as black and white as that. So I certainly found that studying in Cambridge meant that I did meet a lot of impressive people that I could learn a lot of useful things from. But I imagine that even if you're in a different kind of environment, there's still going to be a lot of inspirational people there, and it's just a case of finding those people that you then want to spend time with and learning from them and creating that opportunity. The fourth thing is that without fail, there is always somebody smarter than you. Most of the people who study in Oxford and Cambridge were one of the top, if not the top, at their school before going to Oxford and Cambridge. And only a very, very small number of them are then going to be towards the top or at the top at Oxford or Cambridge. And that can be a tough experience for some. I personally found that was a lesson I needed to learn, and it was quite humbling, but it's just the reality of the situation. But what I think is interesting about that is it highlights the futility of always striving to be the top in whatever environment that you're in. Because ultimately there will be an environment that you can find yourself in where it's impossible for you to be the top no matter how hard you work, because someone is just going to be smarter than you, unless you're Einstein. And therefore, in my opinion, we should just be pursuing knowledge because we're interested in it, because we're curious about it, and not because we want to beat somebody else or prove on paper that we are the top in a particular class. At least that's how I feel about it at the moment. I might change my mind. On the whole, I think we should just be looking to enjoy what we're studying and learning. So the fifth and final thing that I learned, which is specific to having studied medicine, is that academics alone do not make you a good doctor. So obviously as a doctor, you need to know enough to be able to treat patients and diagnose diseases, but I do believe that there is a law of diminishing returns once you get to a certain level of knowledge. What's important besides academics in determining how good a doctor you will be are things like communication skills, being personable, having a good sense of humor, caring about patients that you're looking after, and those aren't things that you can learn from a textbook. And I would personally much rather have somebody who is a more rounded individual who did well in their exams, they studied everything that they needed to learn, but then also that had a social life, that played sports, that did all these cliche things that give you a well-rounded life. We shouldn't just see medicine as a purely academic pursuit, even though it can be quite overwhelming sometimes when you have lots and lots of things that you need to be learning and studying. But ultimately, that's only one component. And the final thing I want to talk about is this question of, is Cambridge something that I should be aiming for? And I've talked about this with my friends on several occasions. In general, the feeling is quite mixed, because obviously there are all these great pros of studying at Cambridge, which I've mentioned, but then there are some downsides as well. It can be very competitive, it can be very difficult to keep up with the coursework, it's very demanding, and it's definitely not for everybody. So in terms of answering the question of, is Cambridge something that people should strive towards? If you're the kind of person who wants to strive to go to Cambridge and wants to be in that competitive environment, then absolutely, I think it is an amazing environment to be in, and it can open many doors for you later in life. If on the other hand, you're somebody who has worked pretty hard and not been able to excel academically, then sacrificing a lot of things and busting a gut to try and get into Cambridge is not necessarily the best thing for you to be doing, because that's only going to continue for the amount of time that you spend in Cambridge. If you're finding it difficult before you're getting in there and you're really having to work hard and maybe not getting fantastic results, then that's only going to continue in Cambridge, and you have to ask whether that's something that you want to put yourself through. If it's something that you wouldn't look forward to and you wouldn't enjoy, then I'm not sure it's worth sacrificing the positive experiences that you could have at university just to have that official stamp of approval of Oxford or Cambridge. Now, if you're somebody who is extremely ambitious and competitive and really wants to be in that Cambridge environment, but unfortunately has not been able to, whether that's because you didn't get an offer to study there, you didn't get the grades, or you didn't become competitive or switched on until later in life, then the approach that I would take would be to say that you can make up for any lost opportunities through not having studied at somewhere like Oxford, Cambridge, by being very proactive and actively seeking out the opportunities that studying at those universities might be able to give you, but you can create those opportunities yourself if you're proactive and if you work hard. That's it for the video. Those are the top 5 life lessons that I learned from studying at Cambridge University. I apologize if that was a bit of a rambly video, but I just wanted to share some of those thoughts. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.